Good evening, everybody. This beautiful sunny moment of Sunday, and welcome. I thought I would talk about Zen. It's kind of an unusual thing for me to be talking about, but often the question comes up: what is Zen? What is Buddhism? What is Zen Buddhism? Oh, they're all the same. So I just thought I'd lay out a little bit of the territory this evening about this Zen. I asked what Zen. Well, it's not the line of cosmetics, the Zen line of cosmetics. It's not a cosmetic practice. It's a very thorough, transformative practice, transforming our life into our life, transforming our days and nights into whole and complete vitality, potentially. And discovering the ground from which all of our experience comes. So there's a lot of discovery and appreciation that emanates from a lifelong Zen practice. It's not an instant pill. So we begin Zen practice with some idea about it, about what we're going to get from it, what it will deliver. We have some intention or a fantasy, or we have a hope, whether it's a hope for that Zen practice will help us have good health, and it can definitely contribute to that. Whether it will bring us calmness, yeah, it can. Cure for anxiety, maybe a bit. It's going to really be the solution to having problems? Definitely not. Wisdom? Yeah. Wisdom meaning when we expand our view of our life, we get to be more realistic about what's going on. We hope for it to ease our suffering and to help us know who we are and how to use our life, how to best use our life. We start because of all kinds of reasons. We might start because a friend of ours is doing it and says it's really cool and they really like it. Or we wander into a class that sounds interesting to us. But we often begin because we want to change what hurts. We want to have some break. And all of you have your own way of having come to this practice. Then, of course, there are some who come to practice after having some kind of unexpected and startling moment of being that just spontaneously happens and sparks a sense of possibility of opening to a much larger life, a much greater sense of vitality. And you recognize that Zen practice is a way to clarify this particular experience and have it function more fully in your life. So some of you may have had some experience that starts your practice off. Some, like the Buddha, remember a state of mind from early in life and want to regain it. A state of mind that you always remember and you wonder about, what was that? What was that I was in touch with there, where I felt really whole and complete and alive and calm, not splintered the way and drawn in a million directions the way I often feel now as an adult. So there are all kinds of things that bring us to Zen practice. And we all struggle in various ways, no matter when or why we come to practice. We practice and struggle And practice and struggle light each other up. As we move into practice, we recognize that it's not that we don't struggle, we don't still strive, but that the things that are most difficult are the most potent spurs for paying very careful attention. We struggle with the conditions of our life that we don't like or aren't quite in line with what we expect or we think we deserve, who we should be. And then when we get into practice, we struggle with practice. We struggle with really wanting some solution. It's really hard to sit still. It's really hard to sit still. Even after you've been doing it for a long time, it's hard. It's hard to quiet the mind. It's hard to reckon with the way the body resists meditation. Not always, but often enough that it is not, it's not a piece of cake. Though sometimes it is. We have those sits that are just like sweet cream, it says at the end of the Genjo Koan. So we discovered that practice is not automatically a solution to our difficulties, but can just become another difficulty, another problem. And this problem manifests one in becoming more critical of ourselves because we don't seem to be able to get it when everybody else seems to get it. Or we struggle because we don't like the Sangha, or we don't like the teacher, or we don't like how we feel around practice. I mean, there are things that come up that are surprising. But what's important is to know that practice is not a solution in the same way that we think of a solution. And that makes me want to say something about the Four Noble Truths, which was the first teaching that the Buddha offered. The Four Noble Truths, the first of which is the truth of difficulties and struggle in life, the truth of resistance and stress and separating from and having aversion to or desire and grasping for. This marks our experience of being a conscious being. So no matter how awake we get, it does not eliminate the truth of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of difficulties. We always have difficulties. These are causes and conditions that mark our life, that mark life. And so the Four Noble Truths and the truth of suffering is foundational to the Buddhist tradition. And this tradition has been developed and expanded through the ages and through a number of cultures. India, China, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia. We have all inherited these specific cultural forms of some basic teachings. And they each have their own flavor, and they each have their own vocabulary and way of labeling with words aspects of our experience. And they come along with scriptural authority and rites and ceremonies and bodies of doctrine. And these all look a lot like what we think of as a religion. It's one of the reasons why it's considered one of the oldest world religions. But Buddhism is a different kind of religion in that it brings about a fundamental change in our personal identity. And actually, some of the other religions can do that in their those who deeply delve into them. But that does not necessarily happen if we are engaging in a religion through the ceremonial ways of and taking refuge in ceremony and in a set of beliefs and doctrines. So, but in Buddhism, we have a method for examining consciousness, our conscious human experience, which was systematically laid out by the Buddha. Actually, it was systematically laid out earlier, and the Buddha and his followers and all the subsequent teachers have expanded that. But Buddhism is not necessarily Zen. So I wanted to talk about what that's all about, because you don't have to be a Buddhist to practice Zen. But Zen insight emerges from the Buddhist tradition, and actually, in order to really benefit from our meditation practice, it's really helpful to use some of the tools of Buddhist practice, such as precepts. Because when we practice with precepts and we kind of clean up our ethical act, and we behave in ways that are truthful and careful and connected, we can be calm enough to meditate. When we're really behaving in ways that are harmful, it's much harder to, if not impossible, to really quiet the mind and the heart to benefit from meditation practice. So Zen emerges from this old tradition. But the Zen insight comes forth in its own right, and also was deeply clarified by the Taoist sensibility in China. Alan Watts says of Zen that it is not a religion of life, and it's not a religion about life. He's talking about Zen now. And in that way, it's not a religion. There's nothing to believe. It's an inquiry. It's a very kind of relentless inquiry. It can feel that way sometimes. Zen concerns itself with the moment, this moment, and what is. This is the concern of Zen practice, this moment. Its primary access point is Zazen. Zazen in meditation, and then also every single moment of experience in our ordinary life. Every moment. But Zazen is not meditation in the ordinary sense. It's not a contemplative exercise. Though we may find ourselves dropping into contemplation, and it can be very beneficial and useful. With a quiet, stable, concentrated mind, we can consider any particular thing very, very broadly and deeply. So it's one of the benefits that can come from a regular Zen practice. But it is not Zazen. Zen is a constant attitude of mind that emerges on the cushion in Zazen, as well as in every moment of life in activity. We can say that Zen practice is our way of life. I often say that this is a way of life. It is the way, capital way, the Tao. That is what has really clarified Zen when it came into China. And when we think of Bodhidharma in the cave facing the wall for 9 years, what is he doing? He is a complete manifestation of Zen. Just this. He came to bring, one way to read that story about Bodhidharma is there was Buddhism in China before he got there, but it was textural. It was all of the teachings, but it did not have the meditation. And so Bodhidharma is the one who really demonstrated Zen meditation, Zazen. It's a way of life. Our practice of Zen is a constant attitude of mind. So when we remember our practice, what are we remembering? We're remembering a certain attitude of mind, to be open and present and take a look and don't assume anything. And of course, over the course of living for a long time and consulting the teachings, which are a rich source of guidance and clarification, the teachings are a wisdom library. But even reading the entire library will not necessarily liberate you from what ails you. But they do all consistently point back to direct investigation of the moment, and which yields an attitude of mind. Only this, right here and now. And only this is where our life unfolds, right here, nowhere else. And right here is the one complete life in all of its particulars. All of its particulars. So really, the practice is very simple. Zen practice is very simple. But it's the complicated thinking mind and the world of ideas and concepts that makes it so difficult. So that's one reason I wanted to just talk about this tonight. Because we talk about a lot of concepts. I mean, we're talk, and we always say it has nothing to do with words and letters. But in what way is that true? So it's good to keep in mind what's what, how the words and letters they're from the wisdom library. There's a lot to be said. And I have to admit that I think that people who are into Zen are kind of obsessive about Zen. I mean, thinking about experience and direct experience and awakening and open awareness, it takes a kind of a very deep interest to motivate a life of practice. A very deep, we call it a vow that we are swept along into. So it's the world of ideas and concepts that makes this practice difficult. When we're so identified with our thoughts, we're out of balance, we're off balance. We're tilted to the mental end of our experience, of our capacity. There's just such an emphasis on that that's very out of balance. Now, sitting every day in Zazen helps us practice the simplicity of being in balance, opening awareness. So we think the mind, the thinking mind, and then awareness. They're not separate, but awareness is way bigger than thought. And there is no structure to it, though there is content to it. So when in activity, when we're active, a Zen attitude of mind and body engages activity completely. That's what Dogen talks about, wholeheartedness in our life. Like one of you yesterday in the garden, we were taking out a clump of grass, wholeheartedly went to it, and before you knew it, that clump of grass was out. It was like, yes, that's the wholehearted of Zen. So that's an activity. And then in sitting, we are as wholehearted. We sit completely with butt on the cushion, spine relatively straight, the top of the head skyward, belly relaxed, and breathing natural. That's the simplicity of Zazen. When sitting, we don't need to think. When writing an essay, we need to think. When sitting, we don't need to compare. When choosing a plan of action, we need to compare. And when sitting, we don't need to move. But when out on the trail running, we're just moving completely. Any activity is motion. So it's not that a life of Zen and this perpetual attitude of Zen means that we have to be still and silent all the time, not at all. But it just means complete commitment to whatever we're doing. Steadily, over time, maybe even without noticing it, our life becomes practice, and practice becomes our life. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to think our life into being. We never did have to think our life into being. It's really so simple. What changes in the Zen way is that thinking takes its place alongside awareness, stillness, sensation, emotion, intention, all the ways that we are propelled into activity are in proportion. Our life becomes much more proportionate. And we notice so much more clearly how our thoughts can bedevil us and can dominate and lead us far away from reality and shape in the doing of that shaping reality. And I think of the influence right now of all of the conspiracy theories. And really, it's probably no different than the fear of the devil in the 1500s. We've always had this ability to mistake our thoughts for what is going on. And so being able to quiet the mind and relax very deeply shines a bright light on the quality of thought, the character of thought, and the content. I think about, when Trump was talking about at that first, when the conspiracy theory people, showed up at the Carolina demonstration and somebody was killed. And afterwards, Trump said there are as many good people among that group as there are among other groups. And I think of how that whole thought of good people, which is really absurd, good people. Of course, there are people who have goodness in every quarter of the world. Everyone has goodness. But some have more access to the broader awareness that allows us to live from that goodness and not forget and get swept away in some of the more harmful characteristics of the mind. So over time, the daily returning to just this moment in Zazen, in this body, with these senses, in this place, awakens a well-integrated appreciation of our basic condition before all activity takes place. And in a way, it's nothing special. but very potent, and can sort out a whole lot of chaff and static that is bound into our small self. Turning awareness in a direction that is open and feels more accurate, more easeful and joyful. If we do this really regularly, like practicing anything, it becomes more and more subtle and all pervasive. And our perspective on things opens up, and we can feel more at home in our skin. I wonder if you found this to be true for yourself, that practice has left you some kind of evolved into feeling just more at home. And not always, but fairly reliably over time. So then I wanted to remark on one more thing before finishing, which is this thing that we say about Zazen is good for nothing. Zazen is good for nothing. That's the phrase that Sawaki Roshi used. So there we are, sitting and breathing and being just our ordinary self. But with a practice of staying just right here, we become accustomed to being right here. And why not? Why not just be right here? We say Zazen is good for nothing to alert us, to remind us not to make this practice into another accomplishment by the self. We say it's not to cultivate a gaining idea or hold a motivation that's based on a sense that we're missing something and Zazen's going to get us it. Something based on a feeling that we want something that we don't have, which really reinforces an inadequacy, a sense of a self that is inadequate. Practice thus becomes another way of running on a hamster cage of pursuit. You know, a hamster wheels, we're always in pursuit. So when we say Zazen is good for nothing, it is not a pursuit. We can relax. There's nothing missing here. And this is what's always meant by practicing without a gaining idea. There is nothing to be gained. Zazen is good for nothing but itself, just like every moment is only itself. Each thing, each experience, each sensation, each thought, each pleasure, each pain, each. What a funny word, each. We so readily fall back into imposing habitual meaning to our moments. We're paying attention, and all of a sudden we find, oh, we've slipped back in. So there's a little exchange in one of the Zen stories I just wanted to share with you real briefly about Joshu, who was the one who, he's a very famous Zen master. And here he began the study of Zen when he was 60 years old and continued until he was 80, when he realized Zen, when he really woke up to the meaning of this whole thing. And he taught from the age of 80 until he was 120. A student once asked him, if I haven't anything in my mind, what shall I do? And Joshu replied, throw it out. But if I haven't anything, how can I throw it out? Continued the questioner. Well, said Joshu, then carry it out. So the questioner really got caught in a sense of nothing in his mind. Joshu was very playful. If you don't throw it out, carry it out. Just let it go. Whatever it takes, just let it go. Don't get caught. So don't get swept up in the skillful and unskillful means teachings of Buddhism. Don't try to be skillful, so much so that you forget the liberating moment that comes from practice itself. This is the momentary practice. We get so filled with Buddhist teachings that we forget just to be simple right here, relaxed. The meaning does not reside in the words, but a pivotal moment brings it forth. That's from Precious Mirror Samadhi. So what is this life? Where does the meaning of our life reside? In the pivotal moment, this moment, Zen. Only here and now. Only here and only now. Thank you. I hope this brought some clarity if there were any questions about what Zen is as opposed to Zen Buddhism. And if you have questions, then bring them to Sanzen. Bring them to Sanzen individually or Thursday night group Sanzen. Just want to remind people of group Sanzen, which is a particularly wonderful place to ask questions, and it's shared. You know, whoever shows up, we benefit from each other's questions and insights in group Sanzen. Okay.